And the first thing that I really wanted to talk about was getting a bit of an understanding of, well, what's the difference between anxiety and stress? Because the two are bounded about quite a lot, and people might assume that they're the same thing. They have so many similarities, but in actual fact, stress is caused by an external situation, and anxiety is actually internal. Go through life often with lots of stressors, but it doesn't always turn into anxiety, because if we're good at managing our stress, so we change the environment, we change the circumstance, the situation, we basically address what the problem is, or where we can't address it fully for whatever reason, we find different tools and techniques to actually manage it, then we can usually move past this, and when that situation has been addressed fully, then we can let it go. But for some people, this just doesn't happen. Either the situation is not something that can be easily changed, or that's their perception. They don't know how to change the situation, and they don't have the tools to actually manage their thoughts and emotions. What happens for these people is that it perpetuates long-term stress, can turn into anxiety, which is an experience which is internal in the body. So our bodies are biologically wired to, they're made up to protect us from danger. So when we have a thought about something and we perceive that to be a dangerous experience, our body is naturally going into this fight or flight response. And 500 years ago, when we potentially could be attacked by a grizzly bear or a wild animal, absolutely we needed to have that response ready to go. Because if we didn't run or fight back, then that would mean death for us. So we are wired to protect ourselves. The challenge is that as humans, we have this thing which is amazing, our imagination. And when it's used to our benefit, we can imagine wonderful things for ourselves and imagine a wonderful life for ourselves. But when our imagination is used to see and dream up these experiences that we believe might happen, even though we don't know for certain, we imagine the worst case scenario, we're imagining the worst possible outcome, then the mind is tricked into believing that this is what's actually happening. So the bodily reaction is exactly like it would be as if you were getting attacked by that grizzly bear. So it's learning again to retrain the brain into bringing ourselves into a much more calm space and actually being able to manage our anxiety much more effectively and reducing the number of times that we feel stressed and anxious. So I want to give you 5 of my top tips using these consistently and really sticking with the techniques. Nothing happens overnight, but the more you use the techniques, the more you start to retrain the brain, and this will give you long-term success. Remembering, of course, if you have an anxiety disorder, it is always good to see a doctor or a mental health professional to help you work through that. So my tips for you today and some techniques. So the first one is clench your fists, like ball your fists together and really, really, really tense them. And do this for 5 seconds, feeling the whole tension in your fists, and at the same time ball your feet as well. So your fists and your feet, really tense them and then release. And repeat this multiple times and you will feel the body go from tense to relaxed. And again, you're training the body and the mind to release the tension. Just try it. You'll see how effective it is. The second one is that you can use the breath. So I want you now to either do this with me or you can do it afterwards, but you want to breathe in and count at the same time. So breathing in for 4, holding at the top for 4, and breathing out for 4. And I want you to repeat that again, creating that space between thought and action, thought and feeling, which becomes action, allowing the body to really settle down and feel relaxed. Another really good tip for you is, have you ever felt when you have that feeling of stress and anxiety that you almost feel like frozen to the spot because you get such a fear of doing whatever it is that needs to be done that nothing happens? Well, I want to give you this tip. Stand up and just move where you're sitting. So if you're sitting on the sofa, or if you're sitting in a chair, or whatever it is you're doing, even if you're in work in your chair, you want to get up and move the body. Now that just is even as simple as taking a quick walk if you can. And if you can't do that, just step up out of your seat and just move and shift position. Being static and stationary, nothing is moving in the body whatsoever, but as soon as you start to move, you start the oxygen pumping through the brain again, and you start to get that movement. That will shift your energy and again bring you out of that anxious feeling. One of the other ones for you is an awareness. Become aware of your thought. When you become aware of the thoughts that you're having, you can then process them, let them go, and move on. So what normally happens is you'll have a thought which creates a feeling, and then an action happens or a behaviour in very quick succession. But if you can slow that down and have the thought, become aware of that thought, so just take a moment to consider what the thought is. I'll say to yourself out loud, and that's okay. So for example, I feel angry, and that's okay. Just recite to yourself what these feelings are and follow it with that's okay. You don't attach stories to it, no judgment, just having the thought, being okay with it, and letting it go. And just watch how you shift and change as you allow those thoughts to process, because thoughts are simply thoughts. They're not facts. They're transient, so they move all the time. And the final one that I have for you, which sounds quite simple, but it's highly effective. If you're feeling anxious and you feel frozen to the spot, speak to someone, anyone, a friend, a family member, a co-worker, because the minute that you air what it is that you're feeling, there's that feeling of a weight coming off your shoulders. Just saying it out loud and sharing it with someone else who may be able to offer you some support, some advice, but also might just be there for a listening ear for you to express how you're feeling. So I hope you enjoyed the tips today and you've enjoyed experiencing a little bit of knowledge in and around stress and anxiety. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and also click the notification bell so that you can find out when all of the videos are coming out with the latest tips, updates and support. So if you would like to speak to me about any of the services I offer, all of my information is in the description box. So for now, thank you for tuning in.